Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal Based Dad podcast. This is the show where, between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky du Plessis, and I have a very special guest with me today, a man I've invited onto the podcast because he and I have been connected for a long time, and he's been one of my mentors in my metabolic health understanding and journey. And I think he's got some valuable insights to share with everyone. Mr. Roderick Lambert, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Very kind of you. And maybe you'll say later on in what way I've been a mentor, but because I'm curious myself. But thank you very much for the kind words and inviting me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Rod, can you give everyone just a brief little overview of your background, where you've come from, what you're doing, and what your little niche is in the metabolic health space?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm 50 years old, so there's a lot of history, and I'll try and keep it short. The first half of my life was spent in the UK. I was born there, lived there, went to school there, educated. And then I met a girl from Czechia, and we decided to spend our lives together. So I moved to Czechia in '97, straight after graduating from university in the UK. Started working, got into HR for a small company, and then moved into international corporate financial group, French financial group, where I sort of rose up the ranks of HR into some quite high positions. You know, I was considered a talent for the organization for the future.
Nice.
And then a few things happened. I mean, first thing is like career-wise, I got to about 40, well, already the end of the 30s. I was wondering what is the meaning of life? Is actually what I'm doing really the fulfilling, the dent in the universe I want to make. And that kind of reached a head early 40s. So in the end, I actually quit my corporate career and trained as a coach. But the other one was the health journey, and I was a pretty lean kid all the way till into my teenage years, until I had an accident or injury from rugby about age 17 or so, which meant I couldn't play rugby anymore. And from that point on, over the decades, I slowly put on the weight until late 30s. I was I don't know, 15 kilograms heavier than I'd been as a teenager. Did the usual eat less, move more, lots of pasta, vegetables, eating 5 times a week, jogging 30 kilometers a week. Lost a few kilograms, and then 40, my birthday, I remember it very well. I got my next big corporate role, became a father. We
Nice.
adopted a wonderful baby boy, changed jobs, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because trying to juggle, just as everybody does, maintaining a career, work, a relationship, and becoming a parent, and actually spending time with them was just killing me mentally. But that yo-yo after that brief period of weight loss just rebounded me back to the heaviest I'd ever been. Huge belly, absolute typical signs of, what you'd call dysfunctional metabolic health, and I call dysfunctional mitochondrial health, which I didn't know at the time. I just thought I was fat. My energy was waning. I was fatigued. I was frustrated, whatever, gloomy.
Did you
all
think
these
you were
kind of
just
things.
aging at the time? Did you associate that with just aging, or were you aware
No,
that
I
something
knew
was wrong?
something was wrong. I knew something
Okay,
was wrong.
cool.
It was I sort of focused a lot on. Well, I didn't realize it was so much to do with my health. It was definitely it was to do with. I thought it was to do with, primarily and solely the kind of working to create value for the shareholder, which I just lost interest.
Yeah.
Just stopped, and sort of that corporate environment of people not really recognizing what you're doing, the effort you're putting in, and the inability in a very large organization to actually have any kind of meaningful impact.
Yeah.
So that was that. So that was what I sort of put it down to. But just before, the last 2 years in corporate, I did start to wonder, why is it that in fact, what is it I'm doing wrong exactly? Although,
Okay.
I was doing things wrong as well. I mean, that even based on, let's say, mainstream advice. And I started delving into well, let's call it nutrition. I came across low carb, high fat on
Hmm.
Facebook, various groups. Started looking into it. People were posting, I don't know, research articles and blogs and that sort of thing. I spent about 2 years trying to delve into it, exactly what it's all about. And that was the aha moment when you realize, but my doctor tells me eat lots of lentils, lots of fiber, of low fat. Get a what was she told me? Eat less, move more, and get a different job. And it
Yeah.
was kind of
Yeah.
that's like really really not very helpful advice. So yeah, and so I quit my job. And pretty much at the same time, after the summer, I went low carb, high fat, and I
Hmm.
did that. I did time restricted eating, so in a window every day,
Hmm.
and I made sure I got about 45 minutes of walking every day, and within 7 months, I dropped over 20 kilograms, more like 25 kilograms, got
That's
down
good.
to
Yeah.
the weight that I am today.
This episode is brought to you thanks to my work as a Zinzino independent partner. To find out more about Zinzino's product offering within test-based personalized nutrition, or to find out about how to join as an independent partner yourself and build a revenue stream in helping others take the guesswork out of their personal health journeys, please stay tuned because I'll be sharing information later in this episode.
At the same time, I was training as a coach. I was set up my sort of started out as my business as
Hmm.
a life coach, trying to network. I was thinking startup founders. I'm quite interested in the startup world. There's kind of people who are under a lot of pressure. They need some kind of help with that. And then
Hmm.
COVID hit. And I realized, and I couldn't network. I couldn't meet people locally. So I realized, well, boom, I don't just speak Czech, but I speak English, of course, because I'm English. I can
Uh-huh. Yeah.
try and I'm not geographically limited or even
Mm.
by language particularly. So let's go online. And I realized I needed a niche because a coach for everything is a coach for nothing.
Hmm.
No one really knows what problems you can solve. So I niched
Hmm.
down to midlife corporate men who were coming to the end of, well, not coming to the end of their career, but got to that stage where they felt trapped, the golden handcuffs, great financial stability, security, benefits, status,
Hmm.
etc. But you're starting to wonder, is it worth it anymore? Is this
Yeah.
actually what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? What am I going to, is this what am I going to tell my grandchildren that I did with my life? These sort of questions that come around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Started out with that. But I was still deeply immersed in health, in nutrition, and basically how the body works. And at one point, I realized there's no point denying it. Dump the midlife corporate uh, meaning of life niche
Hmm.
and go for the midlife corporate. Lose all that. Well, lose fat is
Hmm.
my sort
Hmm.
of message. That's how I put
Yeah.
myself around. And so forward wind another couple of years, and today I realize it's a lot more than just food and movement.
Yes.
Not food and movement. It's there's a whole range of stuff because I finally dived down rabbit holes that took me into the sort of the subcellular workings of biological systems, particularly humans, of course, and that opens your eyes to a completely new world of actually how we create energy. And so my focus went on to mitochondria, even things like quantum biology and the atomic molecular organization of cells, and what we humans can do. What we humans are doing to actually disrupt how our cells and the whole intricate system of biochemical and biophysical reactions that are happening all the time, and what we can do to mitigate and improve the situation. And that's what I do today. So
Awesome.
there you go.
That's a very, very good helicopter overview. Thank you for that. I can't recall when it was that you and I got connected, and it was over LinkedIn initially. And I want to say it was pre-COVID. I'm pretty sure it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And it was around about because I started delving down the same rabbit holes into nutrition, low carb, high fat, ketogenic, stuff like that in early 2018. And you were one of the first people I connected with who posted regularly about this.
Mm.
And so I followed your stuff with great interest, and it spurred me on in my own learning, which is why I refer to you as one of my mentors in the space.
Thank you.
And then we've exchanged information and ideas, and sort of we've kept in contact over many years. We've never met each other face to face, but I think that when you caught on to the fact that you're not restricted geographically, you struck an absolute, like, brilliant, how would you say, the penny dropped, and it was brilliant because we're not in this day and age. I mean, I'm sat in Southampton at the moment doing this recording. You're in Czechia, and we're not restricted by time or geography. And it's like we're in the same room together. It's a fascinating time in which we live. But for a coach like yourself, that must open the horizons quite a lot. Because I imagine 10 years ago, before the sort of laptop culture took over and the remote working culture took over, you would have been restricted to just your immediate geographic area and the people that you could get to. And the networking would have been very, very different to what you have available to you today. So how have you found it building your business online?
Tough. It's
Yeah.
not easy. Yeah, absolutely not easy. It's been gradually building. Funnily enough, the last 6 months, it's been quite a fallow time, interesting enough. I'm not sure if that's Ozempic, the magic injection, or what it is. But of course, I need to turn the mirror to myself, and I know there are things that I should be doing more of, and I'm not.
Okay.
But it's certainly not. It's not the dream. Quit your corporate job and get rich quick. That's for sure. I mean, the stuff that I'm good at, the delivery of the information, the research, the knowledge I empower clients with, the protocols I give them, the actual coaching part that comes after, let's say, the knowledge part of helping them to create lifestyle change. Because I don't do diet, it's actually a lifestyle change. And that involves, help and enabling them to reframe the way they lead their lives, which is a mental process. So that coaching part, I do that, I'd say, really well. Feedback is great, so that's great. But everything else that doesn't give you a business. So it's all the marketing. I love writing content, but I do too much of it, and I don't do it in a focused enough way. But catch me on LinkedIn and maybe Facebook, and I'm almost daily posting stuff that is useful, educational, sometimes a bit of fun as well. But it's the rest. That's okay. But then it's like, reaching out to people to create leads, and that sort of thing. So yeah, and currently I have this, my flagship product is my only product. It's a 3-month coaching program with options, to carry on afterwards. But that's my only product. So I need to scale up, as they say, or what is it? Create. Yeah, something to do with funnels anyway. But anyway, there you go, Ricky. So I'm not the best
good stuff.
person, but I'm not going to be your mentor in business.
That's absolutely fine. I've got no desire to coach, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm the type of guy who likes to learn from people, and I enjoy the fact that people put out content, and I'll absorb it and sort of cross-check it and make sure that it makes sense and get my head wrapped around it. But I like to guide myself. I've never worked with a coach one-on-one for anything out of choice. And obviously in school we did, because that's just how sports work. But outside of that, I'm someone who enjoys finding my own path based on the information that's available from others, which is why I've written a book rather than run down the coaching path. And also probably why I'm doing a podcast rather than coaching as well. But part of what I want to do with this podcast is be able to give people like yourselves, the health coaches, the nutrition coaches, a good plug, because I think that the work that you guys are doing is invaluable and underappreciated, and anything we can do to sort of raise awareness to the general public out there that you're here, you exist, and what you have to offer is valuable, more than happy to contribute in any way I can.
Well, so, much appreciated, Rick.
Oh, you're most welcome. Before we move on, I want to ask you two things. The first is, what does metabolic health mean to you?
Okay. You call it metabolic health. I'll call it mitochondrial health. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's the same thing, just looking at it from a slightly different perspective. Metabolic health or mitochondrial health is when your engine is firing beautifully. It's in tune. It's running great, which means you don't get, energy crashes in the afternoon. You're not putting on weight. You're physically and mentally up to all the things you want to do or the challenges you have to face, because let's face it, life is tough. I spent 50 minutes waiting with my son, trying to get him to school because the train system collapsed this morning. These are these unexpected curveballs that life throws you in. And that can be, I know from my own experience, how damaging they can be to your mental health as well. And I would say mental health comes when you've got resilient cells. Your brain, your neurons are cells. And if they're not firing properly, there's no way they can cope with all the crap that we have to deal with. And that's just the crap we're conscious of. What about all the 90% of what, the other 90% of life that we don't consciously perceive? So that is the key. And it's not just about excess fat on your body. It's about the cellular, or rather, that's just a symptom of your metabolic health or mitochondrial health not functioning as it should be. Naturally, our mitochondrial health degrades over time. That's normal. That's aging. But I'm of the opinion that Western industrial societies are suffering an epidemic of accelerated aging. That we are doing so much to damage the cellular functions of our bodies very early on in life, starting these days with childhood, that we are actually experiencing accelerated aging. So what it is you're vibrant, you're vital, you're mentally and physically prepared for everything, and you're actually, getting some enjoyment out of this life.
100%. So we're talking about your health at the level of the individual cell, upon which the various organs and systems and parts of your body and your mind are built. So really the central foundation to what it is to be you as an individual.
Yep. Cool. And, if you go into quantum physics, you're actually talking about matter and how it the whole quantum theory of the energy field and that sort of thing. But then we get into consciousness and that sort of thing. That's all complicated. That's But if you've got mitochondria, you've got cells, you've got tissues, you've got organs, and then you've got the whole you. So that's the pyramid. You want to look at you want to attack the root cause. And the most important factor of that, and those are your cells. And for me, primarily, it's about the mitochondria.
100%. Complete agreement there. Okay, so having established what it means to you, what have you done today, or what are you doing today to look after your own?
Okay, so in the past it was all about low carb, high fat. It was about movement and fasting. But today I've added to that repertoire a whole bunch of things because I realized that it's much more than that. Morning routine. Well, I'm very careful about my light environment. That's for a number of reasons. most commonly people have heard of circadian rhythms. So the rhythm of dark and night, or light or dark during the 24-hour period, seasonal rhythms, monthly rhythms, etc. And light is the key signaling to your brain, to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and to your skin, what time of day it is, and therefore what your body should be doing.
Yeah.
Think of it as a rail network, like this morning collapsed. So you don't want your rail network to collapse. And that rail network is guided by a key master computer that sits in there and tells all the different stations, drivers, signal junctions, whatever, when, how to work, when, etc. You get that out of sync, then that's another key moment when you start to get all those diagnoses of hypothyroidism, high blood pressure, the leptin signaling for weight loss, absolutely key. If your brain's not doing that every daily inventory of the energy landscape around you and what how your body's working, then it's going to give the signal to store fat, simply because it's your survival mechanism. So that's the light environment. That means I get out in the morning. It changes throughout the year, of course. Now we're getting slightly brighter in the morning. So when I get up, it's already just starting this daybreak. By the time I try and get out as soon as the sun is on the horizon, or at least look out an open window. And then I go with my son up to the station just so I can get that early morning bright light. That's your reset button every morning.
Yeah, that's an initial cortisol pulse.
Well, it's everything. It's if you think of a hormonal cascade, cortisol is just one of those hundreds and hundreds of hormones that are operating in synergy and contradiction to each other, etc., in different phases. So yeah, that bright morning light that you can only get rid of the sun properly, even if it doesn't seem that bright. If you measured in lux, it would still be brighter than any lamp you would switch on or light you switch on at home.
Yeah,
leaving aside purposely built sad lamps and that sort of thing. So that's the signal to reset the clock. Then I try and get out during the day. I sit here in the office in the winter with the window open to let light in, because of course light reflects and bounces around. Windows filter a large proportion of non-visible light. And then in the evening, once the sun's set, 2 or 3 hours before I go to bed, I put on the blue blockers, I dim the lights, I got incandescent lights in, I got special no blue bulbs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And to make sure that my brain is getting the signal, sun has set, it's time to start the preparation for all the stuff that happens during your sleep. So that's one part. The other thing is grounding. In the summer, it's great. I get out a lot, barefoot on the grass. In the winter, thanks to your encouragement, I got myself a grounding mat, which I'm currently standing on, barefoot as we talk. So that's another thing, grounding. Cold therapy in the winter. My Santa brought me a really great, very simple tub. Inflatable tub that you just pour water in and leave it there for a couple of months, and you can get in. It's not cool, chilled or anything, but in Czech here, it's water temperature doesn't get above about 3 or 4 degrees centigrade all winter. So that's great, and that's my wife's. So, you need someone to motivate you and to encourage you. So you talked about the grounding mats. I'm not a big fan of tech, but if you can't do it in nature, then there are devices to help you. So I got myself a grounding mat. My wife's keen on cold therapy. She's the one who always first in, and if she didn't, then sometimes I'd probably chicken out sometimes, because we'd go to lakes and ponds and stuff and jump into these freezing cold pools, natural pools. But thanks to her, I've sort of got a little bit of a taste for that. And so now I use this I got for Christmas, this tub, and that's really convenient. You don't have to go anywhere. And so that's another point.
So just
come on.
Interject there quickly, because the light exposure that you've been talking about, people find hard to relate to, because you have to really develop an understanding of it to notice the differences that it's making in you. And it takes time to notice those differences as well. But the cold exposure is far more acute. And people will be able to relate to that immediately when they do it. So how do you find, because doing it sucks. I do cold showers. Doing it sucks. And Like I'm obviously not as extreme as your good self, but I'll get in a cold shower in the morning and do the little dance around for 3 minutes as best I can, and then get out. But it's when you get out, it's immediately afterwards that you feel the difference. Would you just describe that to the audience, what it is that
Yeah.
you go through?
Yeah. Okay, absolutely. Just one point. I can't do cold showers. I simply cannot do them. I hate them. I will not do cold showers. So no. And they're about, the water in our tap, I measured it once, is about 12 degrees centigrade. So it's actually
It's
fairly
warm.
warm for cold therapy. But so yeah, so uh it's I think you have to have some sort of external motivation, someone to do it with, or when I did that video on the tub, I'd set up to film myself doing it. That I stayed there for 3 minutes rather than my usual sort of 90 to 120 seconds. And I didn't
Mm.
realize. So you need to mentally frame yourself. The other thing about cold exposure, nothing to do with physiology, is it helps you overcome that thing you don't want to do, which is, let's face it, we live a life where we go for convenience, the easiest
Yeah.
possible way. So while we have all sorts of work challenges and relationship challenges, and God knows what, actually doing something that is really hard, you have to get over some sort of barriers, is quite
Mm.
good mental resistance training, let's call it.
Yeah. So you're exercising your resilience
Resilience
deliberately. Yeah.
to get in, exactly,
Yeah.
purposefully, intentionally, exactly. And then you get in, and your body reacts in a fairly consistent way. It's a survival mechanism. First of all, it tells you get out, the trick there I found is to calm your breathing, nose breathe in,
Mhm.
calm your breathing, and just sit out the first 15, 20 seconds. And after that, actually, it starts to get pleasant is not quite the right word I'd use, but it's becomes very bearable, very tolerable.
Tolerable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then it's a matter of, you're monitoring, I mean, sometimes I get a little pain because you're supposed to get right into your carotid artery here.
Mm.
So up to
So
your
you
chin,
get right
basically.
down, submerge up to your neck. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And some people go swimming and and so submerge themselves entirely. But the current, and so sometimes I'll feel, oh, it's starting to feel a bit sort of icy here, so maybe I should get out. You first of all, take it slow. Don't just jump in and expect to be there for a minute or even or even longer. Take it slow, and obviously there are various conditions that might make it less advisable.
Yeah.
But you can cold adapt other ways than just an ice tub. It's very
Mm.
trendy, the cold plunge, but you can wear light clothes. You can drive in the car with the aircon on the lowest possible
Mm.
temperature and the highest possible power into your face with a hat, preferably over your ears, and that sort of thing. So there are other ways of doing it. You can face plunge in the kitchen, in a big bowl.
Yeah.
So there are other ways of doing similar things, or just the cold shower. But yeah, and then once you decide to get out, you get out, and your skin is this uniform pink lobster. By the way, it's a really good test of how much seed oil, polyunsaturated fatty linoleic acid, etc. you've got in your system. If your skin is blotchy, then you probably need to either go shorter or wait another 6 months for that stuff to leave
Mm.
your system. Apparently, it takes up to 2 years. So,
Wow. Okay.
but when you're not, and this is my experience, you're a uniform pink skin. And what's interesting is while it's 5 degrees or 3 degrees or -1 outside the air temperature, when you get out, you actually feel warm. Before you
Mm.
got in, you strip off, it's kind of cold. You get
Yeah.
out, you're now warm. You could actually feel like you could stand out there for a few more minutes naked or in your swimming trunks or whatever
Yeah.
outside. Well, but probably a good idea to dry yourself off and get into the warmth at that point. And what happens to me quite frequently is that after about 20, 30 minutes, I get this onset of shivering,
Okay.
which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but I don't mind it. I put on a fleece and I just sort of do my stuff. And a bit of shivering for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes later, within an
So that would be
an
the body
hour.
bringing itself back up to temperature.
Uh, Presumably, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's the cold therapy, and that is, as you know, it's an acute hormetic shock,
Hmm.
like sauna, like resistance training, like sprinting, all these sort of things, like touching it's like anyway, so those are sort of acute hormetic shocks that are good, resilience. We talk about resilience mental, but it's about you're giving your cells the chance to your system to adapt to a new situation, and then adapt to bring it back to normal again.
And you do that first thing in the morning. How does that set you up in terms of mind space? What's your mental clarity like, and what's your focus like for the day then? Do you notice a difference between days you don't do it and days you do it?
I don't know. I can't tell you honestly. Can't tell you honestly. I do it once to twice a week. I don't do it every day, and I would recommend you do it 2-3 times a week. Probably just and during the winter primarily. It's definitely a winter thing. In the winter, we're supposed to be cold. We live in tempered environments, but I talked about circadian rhythms, daily rhythms, but they're annual rhythms, the seasonal. And depending on where you live, of course, but where we live, it's cold in winter and warm in summer. And that's how we're supposed to be. So, So it helps to recreate that environment to a certain degree.
Nice. Because the reason I ask, what I find is when I've done it afterwards, I have this sense of almost like euphoria. You feel really good. And it seems counterintuitive because you've just exposed yourself to extreme cold. It's unpleasant while you're doing it. There's nothing enjoyable about doing it, the act itself. But immediately afterwards, once you dry and once you're warming back up, you feel brilliant. Like you feel notably better than on days you haven't done it. Like for me, at least, there's a definite difference in the mental clarity and the euphoria that I feel for a period of time afterwards. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Dr. Susanna Soberg talks about it a bit. It's to do with an endorphin release off the back of it.
Hey everyone, I hope that you are enjoying the discussion so far. I apologize for interrupting the episode, but I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the work that I do with Zinzino. Zinzino are a brilliant Scandinavian biotech and life sciences firm. Their concept of test-based personalized nutrition is absolutely revolutionary, and they are the pioneers of test-based personalized nutrition. I use their products and solutions myself and my family. In fact, we use multiple of their products. And Zinzino has been instrumental in helping me identify that I was omega-3 deficient, horrendously so, and to get my omega-3 deficiency resolved. You see, their at-home tests give you the data and insights needed to inform your dietary strategy to see whether you have any key essential nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that need addressing. And where you do, they have targeted supplementation stacks that are personalized to you according to your age, sex, and body weight, which means they are most effective to get you back to optimal. This isn't about just avoiding deficiency. This is about getting you back to optimal, and that's a complete and utter game changer. So if you would like to know more, I have linked a short survey in the episode description. Complete the survey. It asks you some simple questions about your health goals and desires. It takes less than a minute to complete, and what I'll give you off the back of that is a personalized product recommendation out of Zinzino solution catalog, telling you which I think best suit your desires and needs and why. I'll then also personally reach out to you to see if there's any questions or queries that I can answer. Let me take the guesswork out of your health journey.
Could be. I honestly don't know. I mean, yes, I agree. You do feel pretty great, whether that's the physiological response, the hormones that have been released as a result of doing this, or whether it's that the dopamine hit of having achieved something you thought you might not achieve. Our natural source of dopamine is doing tough stuff successfully. So I don't know, but yeah, you do feel pretty good afterwards. That's for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. And then you've touched on quantum biology there. For most people, and I remember my initial reaction when you first started talking about it, because I looked at you like, what weird rabbit hole you've gone down now, eh? Then I started to look into it and pay a bit of attention to it, and there's some pretty robust science. It seems very much, at least in the mainstream, like it's still an emergent field. So it's not widely accepted, and there's a lot of skepticism and a lot of pushback from the mainstream against it. But what differences have you noticed in your own health since starting to pay attention to the quantum biology side of things outside of just your nutrition, just your exercise?
I'm not going to call it quantum biology. I'll be a bit presumptuous of myself because it's such a complicated field. It makes my head explode trying to understand just quantum theory itself.
Yeah,
But I'm going to call it the biophysics of
fine.
that's
Yeah.
a higher level and it's easier to understand. Well, the difference in my health. For me, it's quite difficult because I'm coming from a place where 3 or 4 years I changed my lifestyle around and I'm pretty sure I did a lot of good. Okay. So I'm not going from a place where I'm got diagnosed, my hypothyroidism that had been diagnosed just as I left corporate, just before I did my transformation, is now within whatever safe levels the doctor thinks is safe. So that's gone. All the various physical signals of inflammation and things going wrong, like skin rashes and weird stuff like that, have gone. So I'm not coming from a place where that was a problem. Energy wise, pretty good. I wake up feeling pretty lively in the morning. I go to bed feeling sleepy, ready for bed in the evening. Great. So I don't have, to the best of my knowledge, any kind of pathology that's either nascent or developed that I could feel that has changed. So I don't know. What I'm doing is, based on what I know, I am giving my biophysical systems the best possible chance of doing what they're supposed to do. And
yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Let's put a different spin on it. So you're 50. In comparison, because I'm going to make a few assumptions here, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
But I'm going to assume that the majority of the people that you work with as clients in your health coaching business come to you in their sort of mid to late 40s, early 50s, somewhere in that space, because that tends to be where people have that midlife crisis and realize, like, decades of not looking after myself and now I need to fix it. In comparison to people who haven't switched on to this stuff, how would you rate your health and your function? So versus the general average sedentary 50-year-old, how would you rate yourself?
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it's comparable, frankly. I mean, I've got lots of friends at my peers, plus minus five years. Clients come to me generally around 50, 55 toward between 50 and 60 is, let's say, the majority of my clients.
Cool.
And all of them have, various, we talk about, oh, this hurts and I've got to go to the doctor for this and blah, blah. And I don't evangelize. I don't talk about it. I don't offer advice. So I just sit there and listen. And I'm just thinking in my head, yeah, well, that's because you're not doing this and you're not doing this. You've got a high state of chronic systemic inflammation. You don't do this. Your collagen, I've got to have a knee operation. Well, maybe you do, because there might be something actually anatomically wrong, something ripped, torn, or something, fine. But if it's just because your knees are increasingly hurting until the point that you're having difficulty with your mobility, then that's because your collagen, which is a semiconductor, has become dehydrated and become damaged. You need to regenerate that. So, use your red light panel. Get your mitochondria working properly to create metabolic water, which is something that then hydrates. It's actually it holds charge that returns the conductivity of that protein in your joints. And you'll be surprised how quickly. But I don't tell them that because no one likes advice. So they'd rather go the surgical or the pharmacological route, because that's what we expect to do. So it's incomparable, literally. I mean, the things my peers complain about, I don't experience.
Good points. Yeah. So I would have expected that, but I want the audience to build an appreciation that you've gone down this period of rediscovering what it means to look after the very core central part of what defines your health. And you've cottoned onto the fact that there's more than just diet and movement that contributes to it. You haven't replaced diet and movement with other things. So you've not jumped from one fad to another. You've realized that actually this is a big jigsaw puzzle and there's different pieces necessary. And you've added puzzle pieces over the years as your understanding has grown, which is awesome, because a lot of people will sort of, it's a funny thing with human nature. We want the simplest solution to the most complex problems available. And so what people will tend to do is they'll try a particular way of eating and they might get some results, but they won't necessarily get all the results they want. So instead of then looking elsewhere on what other components are necessary, they'll jump to a completely different one, but abandon the thing that they've just tried. And so they hop from one to another, to another, to another, never getting the results they want because they haven't put together the fact that it's actually a jigsaw puzzle you're looking at, and you need to put in place all the different complicated pieces. So it's fantastic that you've done that, and demonstrably you are
still doing, Ricky. I'm still doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's more to learn, more to do. Fine, yeah.
Lifelong process. It's the journey. You never reach the destination. It's a lifelong process. 100% agree. But you're also demonstrably better off than the average person your age, which I think is a testament to the fact that what you're doing is working, and that's commendable.
Thank you. I play every Monday evening football for 2 hours, 5-a-side, 6-a-side football with a gang of people here in Prague, age generally far younger than me, like late 20s, 30s. I am one of the last people who's still sprinting up and down the pitch after 2 hours of 5-a-side football. I have little to zero late onset soreness, muscle soreness.
You don't get DOMS,
like 1 or 2 days later. I don't have that feeling with 20 minutes left to go, oh Jesus, I've got to stop now while we're doing this. Just like anyway, and that's fitness. But I've lucky to have spent a childhood at school where we basically had organized or impromptu sports 7 days a week for our entire childhood. So I'm sure there's some sort of that base level fitness in there, aerobic fitness in there, and anaerobic to a degree, because football is sprinting. But that wasn't the case 5, 6, 7, and more years ago. So
I was going to say,
I do take pleasure in being one of the fit. I'm not the best footballer by any means. I'm one of the worst. I'm not the fastest by any means, that's for sure. But I do take pleasure in being one of those who's simply the machine running up and down,
that just keeps going,
and not being exhausted afterwards, and not creaking and hurting the next day. So I do take pleasure from that, I admit.
Very nice, very nice. No, that is good. You mentioned there that you think there's perhaps a base left from your schooling days. And I think it's very important that the early sort of what we would call the formational years includes a lot of active play. I think there's tremendous literature to show how that's a very important part of how we learn to socialize and how we just learn different skills, whether it be motor skills, like social skills, so on and so forth. But you do absolutely use you lose it if you're not using it. And I know that myself because I was also incredibly active through school, built like a Greek god with no real effort needed, such is the elixir of youth when you're in your teens and active. And I ate what I wanted. I was in boarding school in Glenwood in South Africa, and we used to eat everything between extra bread.
I'll tell you a story in a moment. Yeah.
And you'd get a burger. Now you've got your your beef patty and it's already in a bun, and you pour some ketchup on that, and then put that whole monstrosity in between two other buttered slices of bread and smash that stuff because you were just always hungry. And you could get away with it all. But then in my final year of school, I snapped the ACL in my left knee. And it was the first major injury I'd ever had. And it rendered me unable to do sport for the majority of that year. And I piled the weight on. And I remember, and it stood out to me because I'd never had to put dedicated effort into anything before. I did biathlon at a provincial level. I was very active, very sporting, but it was always play. It was always things I enjoyed doing. I didn't have to do any dedicated training as such, certainly not as you do as an adult. And so I remember I didn't rehab the knee properly, but when I was cleared to start doing sport again afterwards, roughly a year later, I remember it hitting home how unfit I was and how the things that were so easy to do just weren't there anymore. And it took a long time to build that back up. It took a lot of effort to build that back up. So I don't think, and unless you're active all the way through, I don't think that the benefit of the early years stays with you as such. I think you absolutely lose it if you're not using it. And then you face that struggle of having to build that back up and regain it if you can.
Well, regain it to what level, first of all? So, the childhood you're talking about was pretty, maybe, I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be as children. Probably when you go back 20,000 years, I'm sure children were busy hunting, gathering, and all that stuff as well. But if you're 50 or 60, you don't have to aspire to having that same level of fitness that you had when you were a teenager. Let's be realistic. It doesn't have to be that way. And when you're 60 or 55, your mitochondria are already far, you've lost, I'm not sure what it is, something like 30% of your mitochondrial capacity already at that age. So, it's hard to really get back to that. So yeah, I don't know. I reckon it helped me, but I went to a boarding school like yourself. We had, basically rugby training 5 days a week and matches on Saturdays, and Sunday we were outside playing football just because we had a bit of free time. We were always hungry. At my prep school, we were so hungry that there was always loaves of sliced white bread on the table and bowls of sugar. And butter. So what we got to the meal, we were still so hungry. We'd butter up the bread, stick a load of sugar on, put another slice on. That was our kind of.
They were delicious as well.
Well, of course, sugar is delicious. We know sugar is delicious. And then the second at the prep school, there was a snack. There was what was it called? The snack. Anyway, shop. It was called school shop, and in breaks we'd go, and they had all sorts of, terribly unhealthy snacks. My favorite was a hot dog roll that they sold with tuna mayonnaise or something inside, and I get a packet of salt and vinegar crisps. They were like those sticks. I can't remember what they're called. Salt and vinegar flavored. I put them into the bun, and that was my sort of gastronomic treat.
In South Africa, we used to have it's a weird small little chocolate bar called a chomp. And I couldn't tell you what the UK equivalent to it is because I haven't come across anything like that. But we used to take those, and you would get the freshly baked hot dog rolls, and they had to be freshly baked because they were still warm inside. And you'd tear the top end off, and you'd shove your chomp down into that, and give it a few seconds to start melting, and then you'd smash. Oh man, the things you could get away with at that age. Well, I actually think you don't get away with it.
Right, that's the point.
You don't. The can is kicked further down the road. You're not paying the immediate consequence. It builds up over time.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole thing about deuterium that it doesn't seem to be part of the discourse, or is rarely part of the discourse. But deuterium is highly concentrated in sugar, for instance. So, and we maintain natural deuterium balance.
Sorry. What is deuterium, just for the audience?
It's hydrogen, but it's an isotope of hydrogen. It's the heavier, bigger isotope of hydrogen. If hydrogen was a football, then the deuterium is like the football pitch in terms of size. It's because it has a neutron to it, not just the actual nucleus and electron. All right. The problem with that is that if it gets into your mitochondria, then it completely disrupts us. It breaks those little nanomotors that are spinning at the end of the electron transport chain, creating ATP, which is what the chemical energy that our cells use, not
You mean
calories.
we don't use calories?
Well, I wonder. We should find someone who'll be willing to have a steam engine transplanted into them to see how that works. So deuterium is the big problem. That's the same problem with seed oils, that it's highly
Yeah.
concentrated. Deuterium is everywhere. It's in the air. It's in water. It's in everything. It's absolutely fine in small concentrations, and we need it for all those ligaments and bones and hard tissue that. That's how we use deuterium, for instance. And we regulate it. From sweating, from also the cold therapy, even, etc. So all that stuff is about. It helps us to get rid of excess, or we pee it out, or comes out the kidneys, for instance. So, but when there's too much, then you're breaking your mitochondria. So I'm pretty sure that
overburden element to this. Yeah.
yeah, so that's the problem, is that while we are physically doing a lot of exercise, like back in our day at boarding school, we were actually, able to maintain that balance. Plus, we're in a growth phase. You need, bones are growing.
Yeah.
All your ligaments,
excess.
tissues are growing. So, or rather, the hard tissues are growing. So you need more, actually. So you can get away with it. The problem is it creates habit and a norm, a standard that you continue when you don't need it. And that's the problem.
Yes.
And you stop moving, and you surround yourself with the wrong light, and the sun. Just being in the sun will help deplete deuterium in the body. We spend 90% of our time indoors.
Yeah, and that's actually interesting, because if I've understood the literature correctly, this explains why closer to the equator, people are able to get away with a higher carbohydrate load in their diet versus being closer to the poles without the negative consequences.
Providing they are, of course, also exposed to sunlight. Absolutely. It's one of the ways. Yeah. It's one of the ways they can get away with it. Also, there's a whole mitochondrial haplotype thing. Like, after we moved out of Africa, various streams went that way, and the mitochondria is far more what's the word? Flexible, adaptable than your nuclear DNA. So Professor Doug Wallace has spent 30 years studying mitochondria and also things like mitochondrial haplotypes or haplogroups. You can actually get it tested to find out what your mitochondrial haplogroup is, and find out where your ancestors moved from maybe 30,000, 40,000 years ago, based on what we know, of course. But that also matters. Imagine your Kenyan marathon runner. They have highly efficient mitochondria, because when you're from the equator, when your haplotype is from the equator or near the equator, it's adapted to heat. It doesn't need to be able to create heat, so it doesn't have the uncoupling protein, or it doesn't activate as well. So, but when you put them in a cold environment, they're definitely uncomfortable. We Northerners, we've adapted to the cold, and one of the adaptations was the ability to uncouple our mitochondria, create brown fat, which is mitochondria rich, and we create much less ATP, and we create heat instead. It's like a junction on a railway track. But as a result, our mitochondria are far less efficient than equatorial, let's say.
That's interesting, because I grew up in Durban, and of course I wouldn't have been able to articulate this at the time. I wouldn't have had a clue, but the gift of hindsight being 2020 and taking what we now understand, it explains why, despite having been born and raised in South Africa in several generations, my family having been born and raised in South Africa, and I don't know how far back exactly we go before we get to the European settlers that came across. But I suffered. I had heat stroke multiple times. Like, Durban summers were brutal, and there's, even to this day, like, I have zero desire to visit that place in the heat of summer, because it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. I don't cope well with it. I break out in heat rash. There's nothing fun about being hot. I love being in the cold. I don't like being cold. I'm not suggesting that I enjoy being on the edge of hypothermia. I enjoy being in a cold environment because my body keeps itself warmer naturally, but I have a very hard time in a hot environment maintaining a cooler state. And that's probably because of the what did you call it? Mitochondrial
haplotype or haplogroup.
haplotype. Yeah. There we go.
Very likely, yeah. Although I would say that it's easier for northern haplotype to adapt or live in a southern environment, with the understanding that we're not so adapted to the extreme heat or the extreme sun exposure, or even though, when you get to the equator, it's 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark, so it's just it's constant. Whereas in the north, it's concentrated into half the year and disappears for the other. And we don't have the naturally melanated skin that's or on the surface of our skin anyway. But then someone from with a southern haplotype living in the north, for that I think is actually a more difficult environment to navigate.
Okay.
Because you simply, you're used to 12 hours of daylight, of sunlight on you. You have melanated skin. You don't have uncoupling. You're not so good at uncoupling your mitochondria, et cetera, et cetera. So you move to the UK, which is, cold and dark for half the year.
Not renowned for its good weather.
This weather thing is a bit of a sidetrack. When the sun is up, it's shining. There is sunlight, but yes, it doesn't have UV for half the year, or UVB rather for half the year, and much less UVA, and the infrared is absorbed by the water in the clouds, etc., etc. So much less exposure. Plus, we live in industrialized nations indoors.
Yeah,
and then we amplify, exaggerate, we make it worse with now the lighting environment, with all the Wi-Fi and the tech, which is also demonstrably and observably creating reactions in the mitochondria and in the cells, even the non-ionizing radiation.
Yeah, and that's a very good point you bring up as well, because I don't think the average person, certainly not people who have gone through a similar journey to what we have, I don't think that they realize just how out of sync modern convenience-focused lifestyle is to the fundamental inputs that human physiology needs to maintain homeostasis.
Right.
We live very out of sync with that, to the degree that you have to go and make a tremendous effort, a dedicated effort, to get some of those fundamental inputs and stimuli into your lifestyle, and it's inconvenient.
Totally. The modern expectations of what we're expected to do, that essentially molds our lifestyle, is the antithesis of the millions of years that we experienced prior to primarily the 20th century and today. It started, with the Industrial Revolution, I guess, and before that, the Agricultural Revolution. But in particular, you think about, you see all these graphs that seed oil is introduced here, and with the the increase in chronic disease, heart disease, whatever it might be. Then you see sugar consumption, blah blah blah. All these things are associated, and you can probably link it and map it out. But also, electric lighting was introduced into homes end of the 19th century. Okay. And increased. Then you look at, there's a Swedish study that looks at the introduction of mobile phones in Sweden in 90, I don't know, something or other. And there was a sudden increase in, I can't remember exactly what it was. Was it autism? Was it in I can't remember exactly what it was, but absolutely correlates to the introduction and the rollout of mobile telephony. So all these things have this. So you can find your associations, and we know associations are not causal. You need to sort of find mechanisms. You need to actually do some RCTs or some more. So which is really impossible, because you're not going to. It's really hard to do proper studies because they're unethical.
Because you can't control human beings to the degree that you can animals. It becomes
Well, you can't control them. It's unethical. You can't, and they need to be long enough to have an effect. The other thing is, there are a lot of research that demonstrates, short-term research that demonstrates clear increases in ROS production and various things mitochondria do when exposed to. They've done it differently, different gigahertz of Wi-Fi and mobile phones, etc., but there is a period where you adapt. It's a hormetic stress. The problem is that they're not long enough to see what happens next.
Yeah. The long-term implications not well understood.
And they're not linear. So that's the thing. But after 4 weeks, could be very different after 4 years.
Yeah.
And it could actually be, extrapolate. It could be actually exponential, the damage, because your body generally tries to push back to a health state. But when it's overcome, eventually it just can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Roderick, we could carry on for hours and hours.
Sure we could.
So what we'll probably end up doing, I'll definitely be inviting you back on for a future episode, and perhaps we could even put together a short series. We can talk offline about that. But thank you very much for your time. For the audience, something that I like to ask my guests is, from today's discussion and given your particular niche and interests, what would your one takeaway point be? What's the one thing you would like to resonate with the audience going away from having listened to this discussion? Given you've made it this far into the episode, I can only assume that human metabolic health is a subject you find fascinating and engaging, and it resonates with you, and that's absolutely awesome, because we're very much alike in that regard. And because of that, I want to take a moment to talk to you about potentially becoming a Zinzino independent partner in the same way that I have. You see, Zinzino have tremendous opportunities available for independent partners, meaning people who decide that they don't just want to be a customer, but instead want to use the concept of test-based personalized nutrition to benefit their own health, to take the guesswork out of their own health journeys in the same way that I have, but then to build that user story, to build that testimony of the difference that that's made in our health journeys, and use that to market Zinzino's product, to market the concept of test-based personalized nutrition in the exact way that I'm busy doing right now, and bring on board other customers and other partners to grow the distribution network. And in doing so, you get handsomely rewarded through their compensation scheme, which is one of the best that I've seen in the industry. So if you'd like to explore setting up a side revenue, whether it be something that you only do a couple hours a week, or something that you put a little bit more effort into and build into a full-fledged career, or anything in between, get in touch and let's have a talk about the opportunity and how this might be the right fit for you, not only to take the guesswork out of your personal health journey, but to also build you additional income streams that help to improve your financial situation and the possibilities for you and your family.
That you could talk about, insulin and hormones. You can talk about chemical pathways, your GL1, PL1, or whatever, inhibitors, etc. But these are all impacting your body at a level above cellular function, and subcellular function. So once you understand better what's happening in your cells, you don't have to understand it in great detail. I can't really claim to be the biggest expert in this. Well, I'm certainly not that. And understand exactly how the mitochondria in particular works, then it completely changes the things you can do for your lifestyle. So, I've got a 6-part email series on how we really make energy that goes into this in just enough detail for you to be able to sort of understand it, I hope. But when you see it through that it's about electrons, it's about creating chemical energy, it's about creating and reducing the free radicals, etc., making sure that your cellular function is humming. It's then you'll start to understand that things like bathing in the sea or cold therapy or grounding or the light story is really, really important. And that essentially we're electric beings more than chemical beings, because we require charge, and that completely changes. And that means there's a whole range of things you can do to start including into your lifestyle. There's no point trying to do it all at once. food and movement is for sure part of that, but it's one part of it, and there's a whole range of stuff.
Yeah. There's a complicated old jigsaw puzzle out there, and you need to.
It's a complicated jigsaw puzzle, but if you meet someone like yourself or myself who lays out all the pieces in the box, then you can start putting the puzzle together. That we are the legend to the jigsaw puzzle.
You're very, very kind. Thank you very much for your time, Roderick. It's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Ricky. Good luck with your other podcast. Look forward to this one being published.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.